Hello everyone, I am Marisa Bittar from Brazil and I'm going to start sharing my PowerPoint. I would like to start this presentation by introducing Therese and I. We are two colleagues and friends who have been researching together since 2014, contributing to the internationalization of the history of education in our countries, Canada and Brazil. But why this presentation at ISCHE Milan? First of all, because Italy is the homeland of Mario Manacorda. Second, because Mario Manacorda, one of the greatest interpreters of Antonio Gramsci, spread his thoughts in Brazil. Third, because Manacorda and Gramsci are two influential theorists in the history of education in Brazil. And finally, because Therese and I would like to honor two Italian thinkers at the conference held in Italy. Mario Manacorda was an educator and a historian of education, born in Rome. He lived almost 100 years of an intense intellectual life and also working with his hands, growing grapes. His basic schooling took place during the fascist government, and it was from his own experience that he began to highlight the individual influence of the teacher despite the ideology of the general political system and the school management. From his youth, Manacorda maintained an intense commitment to the Italian Communist Party, devoting himself to the problems of education and culture, including journalistic and editorial activities in l'Unità, the Italian Communist Party. Manacorda's friendships and intellectual collaboration with Brazil was due to the initiative of another Italian, Paulo Nozella, professor at the Federal University of São Carlos in Brazil. In 1986, at his invitation, Manacorda gave a lecture at the Federal University of São Carlos on Gramsci and Marx. In that lecture, he drew attention to the education as a process of formation that is necessarily broad, criticizing the deterministic view of the school as merely reproductive. In 1989, his book, History of Education, was translated in Brazil. This book, which now has more than 10 editions, exerted a great influence on postgraduate studies in Brazil due to its richness of sources and interpretation. In 2006, Manacorda recorded the video to Brazilian educators. On that occasion, he spoke about the great political and theoretical lessons of the 20th century, such as fascism and Stalinism. In addition, he discussed the trends in history of education, highlighting the need to include children and women in research and emphasized one of his main ideas, a cultural school for all. In 2012, Manacorda launched his last book, Marx and Freedom, first-hand in Brazil, defending the inclusion of Marx thought in the liberal tradition of his time. I will now show you some images related to these collaborative works between Brazil and Italy. This photograph shows Manacorda at Federal University of São Carlos when he first came in Brazil. The next one is the cover of his main book, translated in Brazil, and a very important one. The book on Gramsci was translated into Portuguese and generating an important interest in research on education and work in Brazil. And here we can see Paolo Nozella, who in 2006 went to Italy in order to record the video to Brazilian educators. That year, Manacorda was living in Bolcena, his country house, where he worked the land every day and wrote a book about sports. And now, the cover of the book Marx and Freedom, launched firsthand in Brazil. To conclude, I would like to highlight the importance of friendship and collaborative work that were developed for almost 30 years between Brazilian researchers of the history of education and Manacorda, who always welcomed them, whether in Rome or in Bolcena. Manacorda contributed significantly to the circulation of knowledge between Brazil and Italy. At the same time, we can say that this collaboration between Brazil and Italy was an original form of internationalization of the history of education. I end up showing Manacorda in June 2012, with almost 100 years old, is still very active and concerned with the same problems of education, mainly a school of culture for all. Before I say goodbye, I would like to take this opportunity to thank my colleague Therese for the collaboration we have been developing since 2014, and also Lajos Somogvari for our joint work on the Stand Working Group Observatory for the History of Education. Now I stop sharing, and I would like to say thank you very much, and bye-bye.